The Senate will come to order. Please rise in the gallery for the invocation to be delivered by Pastor Dan Shepman of Gloria Dei Lutheran Church in Houston, Texas.
Thank you, Senator Creighton. Thank you, Senator Middleton, for the opportunity to lead this esteemed body in prayer and for representing us all in what you do. For the opportunity for me to live out 1 Timothy chapter 2, praying for you, the leaders of the great state of Texas. Let's pray. Gracious and sovereign Lord, we give you thanks this day for the gift of the Texas legislature, for Governor Patrick and for all our senators. Grant to each of them hearts that are open to your voice and leading. Guide this chamber in a godly direction, that the laws shaped here be a blessing to all. In the face of complex decisions, bless them with discernment, wisdom, and vision to follow your will for our great state of Texas. May integrity guide their every step, humility shape their service, and your righteousness reflected in all they do and say. We pray your protection over each senator and all their staff. Keep them in good health, guard them from all harm, and strengthen them in their character and calling. But above all, we thank you for your incredible message of your grace, that even in our sins, Christ died for us. Remind us that it is through his life, death, and resurrection that we live with hope and purpose. May this reality shape how we all serve and how they govern, knowing that they are loved and redeemed by you. All this we ask with hope and confidence in your mercy and grace through your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord, our Savior. Amen.
You may be seated in the gallery. Members, if you are able, please greet Pastor Shepman on his way out of the chamber. Mr. Doorkeeper.
Mr. President, there's a message from the House.
Admit the messenger.
Mr. President, I am directed by the House to inform the Senate that the House has taken the following action. The House has passed the following measures: HB 1400, Harris, relating to creation of the Groundwater Science, Research, and Innovation Fund to be administered by the Texas Water Development Board.
The following message from the governor. The secretary will read the message.
To the Senate of the 89th Legislature, regular session, I ask the advice, consent, and confirmation of the Senate with respect to the following appointments. To be members of the Texas Southern University Board of Regents: Lauren A. Gore, Houston; Benjamin H. Ben Proler, Houston; Alithia Z. Sullivan, Austin. Respectfully submitted, Greg Abbott, Governor of Texas.
Members, we have a memorial resolution. If you could take your seats. The chair lays out the following resolution. The secretary will read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 57 by King. Whereas a rich and purposeful life drew to a close with the passing of Patricia Young Williams of Willow Park on January 18, 2025, at the age of 67. And whereas the former Patty Young was born on August 10, 1957, to Herman and Kitty Young in Ottawa, Canada, where her family resided after immigrating from Germany. The Young family eventually moved to Fort Worth and became U.S. citizens, and she graduated from Arlington Heights High School, which later named her a distinguished graduate. She subsequently earned a bachelor's degree in business from Austin College. And whereas early in her career, Mrs. Williams worked in the hospitality business at Green Oaks Inn in Fort Worth before becoming a sales manager for AmFac Hotels at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. She achieved great success after joining the executive team of Roger Williams Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram SRT in Weatherford, a dealership owned by her husband, U.S. Congressman Roger Williams. The couple shared 41 years of marriage and took great joy in welcoming their two daughters, JJ and Sabrina, into the business as managing partners. Later in life, they were further blessed with two grandchildren, Clara and Emmy. And whereas in 1995, Mrs. Williams was appointed by Governor George W. Bush to the Texas Automobile Theft Prevention Authority, and she was later elected as its first female chair. She was appointed by Governor Rick Perry to serve as a public member and director of the State Bar of Texas in 2002. Among the many other organizations that benefited from her involvement were the Better Business Bureau of Fort Worth and Tarrant County, the Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce, the Tarrant Area Food Bank, Texas Women for the Arts, and the Austin College President's Council. And she was also active in her congregation at Willow Park Baptist Church. Over the years, she received a number of honors, which included being named the most influential businesswoman of the year by the Fort Worth Business Press in 1997. And whereas Patty Williams was a devoted wife and mother, an accomplished business leader, and a model of civic engagement, and she leaves behind a record of service and success that her loved ones can remember with pride. Now therefore be it resolved that the Senate of the 89th Texas Legislature hereby pay tribute to the life of Patricia Young Williams and extend sincere sympathy to the members of her family, to her husband, the Honorable Roger Williams, to her children, Jacqueline Williams Contreras and her husband Eric, and Sabrina Williams Spears and her husband Jesse, to her grandchildren, Clara Contreras and Emmy Max Spears, to her sister Susan Davis and her husband Greg, and to her many other relatives and friends, and be it further resolved that when the Texas Senate adjourns this day, it do so in memory of Patty Williams.
Chair recognizes Senator King on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this is a wonderful morning for me this morning. I'm honored to have Congressman Roger Williams here today as we celebrate the life and legacy of his wife of 41 years, Patty. Patty passed away in January after a long battle with cancer. I will tell you that she and my son Josh went through that cancer battle together with the families often sharing possible new treatments and ideas, and even one doctor at Duke Medical Center. There's some interesting stories to tell about that, which I want to get to in just a minute. But Roger and Patty have two daughters, JJ and Sabrina, who are also here with us, along with their two granddaughters, Clara and Emmy. There was nothing that Patty loved more than being a mom to her girls, and Coco to Emmy and Clara. In the gallery, we have some more family and friends. We have Eric Contreras, which is JJ's husband. If y'all would stand as I call your names, please. Jesse Spears, Sabrina's husband. Roger and Patty's niece, Katie Harries, and her husband, Brad, who's an Austin PD officer. Robin Hess, the district director. Leanne Ivy, campaign manager, and long time friend of the family and mine, for that matter. Furley Edwards and Colby Hale, who is their former chief of staff and another extended family member through those many years. Patty was a pillar in Weatherford and in the Fort Worth communities. You heard as it was read in the resolution, she had just amazing business accomplishments throughout the Tarrant County and Parker County area. She played such a key role in running the family business. And although Roger is a prominent United States congressman, Roger, we are here today not for you, but simply because Patty was such an incredibly extraordinary Texas woman in so many ways. And I just had the privilege of knowing her. I never saw her that she was not just filled with joy. And I saw her at times when people might not normally be filled with joy. She was just that type of person. I remember Roger calling me one time, and they had been on a flight to go out to Duke, and Patty had a very severe seizure from the brain cancer en route. And he told me when she came out of the seizure that she asked two questions. First one was, did anybody feed the dog? And the second one was, how's Josh King doing? And I always remember that story with almost tears. She loved Jesus. I can tell you that in her last months, she wrote a beautiful song of worship that's been sung many times at Will Park Baptist, where she and the family are members. I know there's some other senators that want to make some statements as well. I will just say that members, when we adjourn today, I ask that we do so in memory of Patty Williams, a truly extraordinary mother, grandmother, businesswoman, and Texan.
Chair recognizes Senator Hancock on the resolution.
Thanks, Senator King. I appreciate you bringing this in memory of Patty and Roger and family. Patty was absolutely the definition of grace and beauty. She was the definition of humble, bridled strength. She was not weak at all, but she was quiet. She let Roger lead. And it seems like, Roger, every time we saw Patty around Fort Worth, it was with family. And you knew just the love that she had for her family and the care she had for them. She will certainly be missed. Though quiet reflection on the city, she was loved. She was loved by all people. And the difficulties that she had to go through, those are things we can't explain. But I appreciate the resolution, the opportunity just to acknowledge someone who was a bright and shining star for Fort Worth and for Tarrant County, and just the way she presented herself. There's one of those people, sometimes when you're around people of faith, all you have to do is be around them. You know. And with Patty, you just knew. You knew who she was just by looking at her. And she presented herself in that fashion. Thank you all for allowing us to share this time with you.
Chair recognizes Senator Birdwell on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, thank you, Senator King, for bringing the resolution. Roger, if I may, it's hard what we're doing here because while Patty passed in January, you're affording us the opportunity to revisit the scar on your heart, scar on your life, and having your life partner and your wife and spouse no longer with us. Patty was always very unassuming. There was always a joy. I mean, y'all were just a great partnership, in Christian marriage. The example of that was just always great. Got to see you at so many things, because you're my congressman. You're my United States representative. We share many counties. And I know she's missed across the district, but most of all, I know she's missed in your heart. your family's heart. Your team has always been just a blessing to us, Verley and Leanne, and your office has always been exceedingly open to whatever contact the Birdwell family has for you. I hope that this contact that we have with you now in honoring Patty's life, that you'll forgive us for tugging at the scar, knowing that that scar's on your heart. But I would just remind you that song from Casting Crowns, the only scars in heaven are on the Lord. Otherwise, there are no more scars, and Patty's scars are removed. We wish she were still with us today, but we know that she's in a better place. Thank you for letting us honor you and bless you today, even though we're tugging at that scar. God bless you, Congressman. Thank you, sir.
Chair recognizes Senator Betancourt to speak on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Roger, it seems like long ago in a galaxy far away when a young tax assessor met a then still young, Secretary of State. And yes, we talked about election issues, what seems to be for 2 or 3 years. And I think I remember meeting Patty in that process, and as Senator Hancock said, she was very quiet, but I could tell that you married up. And now you've got multiple generations of up here. They keep going into the future. And it's fantastic to hear about the relationship between the King family and the Williams family. And with that, Mr. President, I move to add all senators' names to the resolution.
Chair recognizes Senator Kolkhorst on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator King, for bringing this resolution. I echo the comments of my colleagues. Roger, what a joy it was to live in Fort Worth, to go to TCU, and then to spend years professionally there and get to watch your family in action. The impact that they had in Tarrant County, that y'all still have, Tarrant County and Parker County, and that you just infused yourself in our community in every way. And Patty was such a beautiful woman. To her daughters, I see her in you. And I just want to thank y'all. Patty was taken far too early, but her legacy lives on, and she'll never be forgotten. Not in Tarrant County, not in Parker County, and not with so many of us. So it's great to remember today and to reflect and to use her life as a guide to all of us. Thank you so much for what your family means to a great community in North Texas.
Senator Betancourt moves to add all members' names. Is there objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted. Chair recognizes Senator King to close on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of the resolution.
Would all those in favor of the resolution please rise? The resolution is adopted. Chair recognizes Senator Perry to introduce the Doctor of the Day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, today it's my privilege and pleasure to welcome Dr. David Randall, a dedicated family medical physician based in Abilene with more than 35 years of experience in the medical field. Dr. Randall earned his degree from Texas College of Orthopedic Medicine and went on to complete his internship and residency in family medicine at St. Peter Smith's Hospital, John Peter Smith's Hospital. He provides comprehensive care for patients of all ages, offering everything from annual checkups, vaccinations, managing acute illness, and chronic health conditions. We're especially grateful to Dr. Randall for all the family physicians who generally volunteer their time away from their practices to serve in the Capitol Clinic. Thank you, Dr. Randall, for your service and being here today. Members, please welcome the Doctor of the Day from Abilene, Texas, District 28. Thanks.
Chair lays out the following resolution. The Secretary will read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 408 by West and Miles, recognizing April 14, 2025 as Red and White Day at the state capitol.
Chair recognizes Senator West on the resolution.
Mr. President, members, I proudly rise with my colleague, Senator Miles. Senator Miles? Okay. Representing him also. Recognize the distinguished members of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated who are at the Capitol for their Red and White Day. These ladies really need no introduction. Fact of the matter is that they're world renowned. Let me give you a little background about them now. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated is a sister of predominantly African American college educated women whose purpose is to provide assistance and support through established programs in local communities throughout the world in your respective districts. So when you need to make certain that you get perspectives from all people in your district, reach out, Senator Betancourt, to Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Reach out, Senator Huffman, on budget-related issues to the women of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. They have CPAs, accountants, CEOs, and go on and on and on. In fact, some of them have taken off today to be here with us. You know, this organization originally founded in 1913 by 22 phenomenal trendsetters who saw no limit to their vision for sisterhood, scholarship, service. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated has clearly distinguished itself as a public service organization that provides an extensive array of public service initiatives through its 5-point programmatic thrusts. I must note that I have 3 members of our body, legislative body, here with me today. I'm gonna start with the freshman House member, Lauren Simmons. Lauren, would you please stand up? Greta Bowers. And the other lady, her name is, oh yeah, Tony Rose. You know, throughout the world, many notable members are recognized as women who helped mold a legacy to make Delta the organization that is a powerful force, more than just a sorority. Members like Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm, when the Democratic Party was attempting to try to get her not to run for president, guess what she did? She ran. Patricia Robert Harris, Dorothy Height, and most notable, a former member of this body, whose portrait hangs in this body, the Honorable Barbara Jordan. Mr. President and members, I'd also like to recognize the regional and state leadership that is here with us today, representing the blazing Southwest region. Kamala Gibbs, raise your hand. Southwest Regional Representative. Kayla Patton, State Facilitator. Karen, I'm trying to get y'all to say it, all right? Karen Dorso, the Texas and New Mexico Coordinator. Celeste Williams, the Texas Social Action Coordinator. And the Honorable Judge Wanda Adams, Harris County Judge. As your brother of Omega Psi Phi fraternity, ladies, thank you for all you have done. thank you for all that you're going to do, knowing the importance of the work that you have done and will continue to do. It is real important that my colleagues know who you are and that you are available to give them input into their decision-making process if asked to do it, okay? And understand that they may not take your input. They will listen to you, though, every person, whether they're Democrat or Republican on this floor. And they'll take it, they will weigh it, and hopefully use it to make final decisions. So again, thank you very much for being here. And Mr. President, I'd ask the ladies, the distinguished ladies of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated to stand up and ask that we give them a standing ovation for a job well done. Mr. President, I'd ask passage of Senate Bill 408.
Chair recognizes Senator Menendez
Thank you,
to
Mr.
speak
President.
on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to thank Senator West and thank the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta for joining us today. I had the pleasure of visiting with the distinguished group that's on the floor with us, and I was so impressed. We have two young students in college here who I know are going to help change the world. And so, Sir West, you know, I just can't help but think about what you said about having them help us think about policies, those that are good for the state and those that are maybe need a new perspective, a new look. And so I want to say thank you for you joining us, because your value is in what you can teach us and how you can help us think about things differently. And so if there are any of you from Bexar County, please know that you are very welcomed and you are thought of, and it is an honor and a privilege to represent you in the Texas Senate. Senator West, I'd like to make a motion, if you don't oppose, to add all members' names to this distinguished resolution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Menendez moves to add all names to the resolution. Is there objection? Hearing none, so ordered. Chair recognizes Senator Betancourt to speak on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President, members. And Senator West, I didn't just ask for some help. I relied on what I think has been the best legislation that we've had to fix elections in Harris County, because Clerk Tanisha Husband has done that fabulous job. Where is she, Tanisha? There she is. So, Wanda, I just don't ask for help from this sorority. I rely on this help from this sorority. And thank you. I hope you have a great day at the Capitol. Thank you, Tanisha.
The chair recognizes Senator West to close on the resolution.
Mr. President, I move passage of Senate Resolution 408.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? Hearing none, the resolution is adopted. Chair lays out the following resolutions. The secretary will read the resolutions.
Senate Resolution 396 by Campbell, Senate Resolution 397 by Hughes and Schwartner, Senate Resolution 398 by Hughes, Senate Resolution 399 by Hughes and Schwartner, Senate Resolution 400 by Campbell, Senate Resolution 401 by Hughes, Senate Resolution 403 by Eckhart, Senate Resolution 404 by Kolkhorst, Senate Resolution 405 by Kolkhorst, Senate Resolution 406 by Kolkhorst, Senate Resolution 410 by Hinojosa of Hidalgo, Senate Resolution 411 by Hinojosa of Hidalgo.
Members, this is a voice vote. All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. Resolutions are adopted. Members, if there's no objection, I'd like to postpone the further reading and referral of bills to the end of today's calendar. Hearing no objection, so ordered. Members, we're about to begin our calendar for the day. Senator Campbell, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 762.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business to take up and consider committee substitute Senate Bill 762. This bill addresses the distractions of political symbols in public schools which have sparked disruption. This committee substitute Senate Bill 762 allows the display of specific flags that are more in line with federally recognized and state recognized flags. Others are excluded unless part of the curriculum, and schools failing to report remedies when a flag that is not allowed to be displayed in school. They have 10 business days and would be subject to $500 daily civil penalty and enforced by the Attorney General. And with that, I move suspension.
Senator Menendez, for what purpose?
Questions of the author, Mr. President.
Senator Campbell, do you yield for questions?
I do.
Senator Menendez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Campbell. Quick question. Senator Campbell, schools already have policies about what can and cannot be displayed in the classroom. So I guess I'm wondering specifically what prompted this legislation? I mean, is there a specific list? I'm wondering, I can't see a way that a child could have a flag with a Spurs logo if this passes, or the Cowboys, or are we banning the Houston Rockets or the Dallas Mavericks? I just don't understand. But in all seriousness, I guess what problem is the bill trying to solve?
To make sure we don't have, that we are focusing on education and not advocacy. Don't have flags that might cause disruption in the classroom.
So does this bill then, because it doesn't specify student organizations like the Future Farmers of America, DECA, the Honor Society, does it, or mental health initiatives, does it also ban those because they're not on the list?
If the flags are part of the educational curriculum, the flags can be displayed.
Okay. What about if a student creates an awareness campaign about mental health issues, anti-bullying, suicide prevention? Would those be considered violations of this bill?
Yes.
So
They're displayed in the classroom.
Pardon me?
Yes, if they're displayed in the classroom.
So when you and I in this body, we passed the cyberbullying law named as David's Law, they had some, anti-bullying signs and flags, so we can't display those in the classroom.
Not the flag, not a flag.
Not a flag.
This bill is related to flags only.
Okay. So if there's a flag of, if the flag is listed as the only way the flag can be, if the flag is listed in your bill, that's the only way it can be displayed? And
They're the only flags that can be displayed, yes.
I guess the question is, I'm trying to figure out the policy behind this. And I guess the question is, once again, what policy initiative are we trying to solve here? Does this improve education?
It takes away any advocacy time. It takes away, if it's not promoting education as part of the curriculum, it does not need to be displayed. Flags are powerful symbols that play a critical, multifaceted role in the life of our nation or in our state. And it visually represents identity and values of our nation or state. Any attempt that dilute the unity of our state flag or Texas's flag or our national flag can't help with competing flags to be divisive and may distort patriotism or loyalty toward the nation or our state. We just need to not have advocacy flags displayed in the classroom unless it's part of the curriculum. And then I would expect that it's a temporary display.
Does this bill apply to private schools?
No.
Only public schools?
Public schools.
So, thank you for answering.
I think that private schools should adhere to it.
Thank you. Thank you for answering
I do,
my question.
absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Menendez.
Senator Eckhart, for what purpose?
To ask questions of the author of the bill.
Senator Campbell, do you yield for questions?
Yes, I do.
Senator Eckhart, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, Senator Campbell. Your bill defines flag as a piece of fabric or other material with a design symbolizing a cause. Would this include stickers?
No.
But it does include pennants.
Fabric, yes. That are displayed in the classroom, yes.
So would it include any non-fabric, what other non-fabric materials does it include?
You'd have to tell me. It's what defines a flag, and it's typically rectangular shape. It can have other shapes, and it is material, fabric, not paper.
So rainbow wall art on paper would not be subject to this?
It is unless it's defined as a flag, no, it would not. I think it would be disruptive if it's posted on the wall, but does not include that's not included in the definition of a flag.
So if it's a paper flag, it would not be covered?
If it is a flag, it would be covered. It is a fabric. If it's a flag, it's covered.
You could see how this might be confusing.
It might be.
So if it is a flag drawn on a piece of paper,
no,
it would not be covered by your bill.
Is it displayed?
Yes, displayed.
In the room as a flag would be?
If it is a flag drawn on a piece of paper and displayed on the wall.
No.
Thank you. Thank you for answering my question.
You're welcome.
Senator Alvarado, for what purpose?
Ask the author a few questions.
Senator Campbell, do you yield for questions?
Yes, I do.
Senator Alvarado, you're recognized.
Senator Campbell, what about during certain holidays like Cinco de Mayo? Would a Mexican flag be allowed?
If it's part of the curriculum, they're recognizing that. They usually put that in the curriculum. If there are specific days that teachers may recognize different, like Fiesta, Mexican flag. It's a temporary display. That would be fine. That's part of their curriculum for that day.
Well, because we have Cinco de Mayo, which a lot of Americans also celebrate. You also have Hispanic Heritage Month, which includes 16 de Septiembre, which is a much bigger holiday for those of Mexican descent. So would that be allowed during that time?
If it is part of the curriculum. If the teacher is teaching about it, what it means, then it would be allowed. If it's just hoisted or displayed on a pole in the classroom, no. But if it's part of the curriculum, meaning what the teacher is teaching, then yes, it would be allowed.
Okay, and why not have it apply to private schools as well?
I think, yes, we can. We should.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Okay. Are you, well,
we will offer an amendment.
I don't want to offer the amendment.
I'm happy to offer
I'm not going to vote for the bill, but I mean, I just think.
No, we can. Senator Menendez had asked about that.
Okay.
Specifically, it doesn't say that, yes or no, but I'll offer an amendment. We can do that. We can offer it together.
I think you alone would do just fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for answering my question.
Yes, I think it's appropriate.
Senator Campbell moves suspension of the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 762. There is objection. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock.
There being 23 ayes and 8 nays, the rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading committee substitute for Senate Bill 762. The secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute, Senate Bill 762, relating to the display of flags in public schools.
The following amendment.
Floor amendment number 1 by Campbell.
Senator Campbell, you're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment strikes the word state and changes it to Texas in the bill. And it says that we're also removing line 8 that it's stricken from, and we will be reordering the numbers. And it adds that any listed flag cannot be altered in color or symbols otherwise. It must stay in their normal, flags displayed must stay in their original form. And we will be changing on the next amendment from a public to just school, so that we include both private and public.
Senator Menendez, for what purpose?
Question to the author of the amendment, Mr. President.
Senator Campbell, do you yield for questions on the amendment?
I do.
Senator Menendez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Campbell. I was just reading the amendment. On line 11 here, it says a public elementary or secondary school may not display or permit an employee, agent, volunteer, or student to display on school property a flag described by subsection. Okay, so what you're getting at is even if the flag is allowed in subsection B, they can't alter the colors or the symbols of the appearance. That's what you're saying?
For example, yes.
Okay. So if it says on school property, I'm assuming that means in the parking lot as well?
School property, wherever the campus extends.
Okay, so a volunteer or student. Okay, so, all right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
for
Senator
answering my
Menendez,
question.
and thank you for asking the question a while ago regarding private schools.
Senator West, for what purpose?
Question of the author.
Senator Campbell, do you yield for questions?
I do.
Senator West, you're recognized.
Senator Campbell, these are some questions that came up when I was at home.
Yes.
Okay. When we say any other flag, how does a team, a football team, a lot of times they take flags out on the field. Does this bill prevent them from displaying that flag on the football field?
No,
Is there
it's active and it's not displayed
I'm sorry?
necessarily. That's an act, no, it does not prevent that.
All right, then help me to, and this is for purposes of understanding display, because it could be vague.
Could be what?
The term display
Yes.
could be vague from the standpoint of what do you mean when you say display? You know, when I think of display, I think about putting something on the shelf and just leaving it there. So is there a duration of time attached to display, the verb display?
The flags that are listed in the bill can be permanently displayed. If it is a flag displayed for the purpose of teaching, it's not going to be taught every day the same subject. But the football teams, with them running out with their flags, or a temporary event program that you would expect for school recognition of their mascot, would be accepted.
And so if a teacher wanted to bring different flags to the classroom as part of a lesson plan, they're able to do that, correct?
They are. And of course, the lesson plans are in line with the TEKS, but yes, they are.
Okay, because I want to make certain there's no chilling effect as it relates to what is expected, assuming that this bill passes. And so teachers, employees, agents would be able to, on a temporary basis, be able to display flags as a part of a lesson plan or a program that they're having on campus.
Just like, yes, the answer to that is yes.
Okay. And so if a volunteer organization is coming on campus and they have a flag as a part of whatever activity they're having on campus, they're able to do that. It's my understanding.
It cannot be displayed in the classroom unless it's part of the curriculum of the classroom. If you're talking about an outside event, this doesn't apply to that.
Okay. It does not apply to an outside event.
No, because an outside event, somebody can come and go as they wish. They're not in the classroom with it being taught, or not being taught, just posted or displayed. So yes, it's allowed, whatever you,
All right.
the question you asked, I just got off a little bit on a tangent.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Senator Eckhart, for what purpose?
To ask questions on the amendment of the author.
Senator Campbell, do you yield for questions?
Yes, on this amendment, and then I will need to, hang on one second. I will, because I'm not sure what your question applies to. If I was to put the amendment to include private schools because it's addressed around public schools, that would violate the germaneness of this. So I will not be offering an amendment that includes private schools on this bill.
And my questions do not go to the private school issue.
The amendment that I just asked to be drafted, I am not going to present it because it would violate the two-subject rule. It would not be germane. And I think this is important for our classrooms. So I will not be offering that. Now, I know that may not be what you were going to ask me, but since I had the mic, I just wanted to let the members know that I have changed my mind because of the two-subject rule.
Senator Campbell, do you yield for additional questions from Senator Eckhart?
I do. And sorry I took up her time.
Senator Eckhart, you're recognized.
Thank you so much. And just with regard to the amendment, is this amendment designed to get at alterations of flags such as the Blue Lives Matter flag or upside down flags?
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify if that was the rationale behind it. Thank you.
If it's an alteration of the standard flags as we know it, for instance, the U.S. flag, that's what that applies to. Alteration of a flag that's not on the list, I'm not speaking to that because that flag's not allowed by the bill.
Thank you very much for clarifying
Yes,
that.
ma'am.
Senator Alvarado, for what purpose?
To ask the author a question.
Yes,
Senator Campbell, do you yield?
I do.
Senator Alvarado, you're recognized.
Thank you, Senator Campbell. When we were talking just a bit ago, you were open to offering the amendment so that it would cover private schools as well. And now you've just said that you're not. Is it because of the caption of the bill?
I sought advice and found out that it would violate the germaneness, so I don't want to risk that.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that another bill at another date could not be made that was specifically for private schools.
Well, I'm guessing that what you're thinking about is the caption of the bill, and if that were the case, maybe that could be corrected, because I think there should not be two sets of standards, one for public schools and private schools on.
But we do have, I hear what you're saying. I think a separate bill would be appropriate. I can look at that, but I'm not going to risk this bill with the advice that it's possible that it would affect the germaneness because of a two-subject rule.
It might be a little too late for a new bill.
It could be too late. Commonly it is.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? There is objection. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa of Nueces, Hinojosa of Hidalgo, Huffman, Hughes, Johnson, King, Colcourse, Menendez, Middleton.
There being 23 ayes and 8 nays, the amendment is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Campbell, you're recognized for a motion.
I move passage to engrossment.
Senator Campbell moves passage to engrossment. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa of Hidalgo, of Nueces, Hinojosa of Hidalgo, Huffman.
There being 23 ayes and 8 nays, the bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Campbell will hold there.
Thank you very much.
Chair lays out the following resolution. The Secretary will read the resolution.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 47 by Zaffarini, granting either house of the legislature permission to adjourn for more than 3 days during the period beginning on Wednesday, April 16th and ending on Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025.
Chair recognizes Dean Zaffarini on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and members, I move adoption of Senate Concurrent Resolution 47, which grants each house of the legislature permission to adjourn for more than 3 days, beginning on Wednesday, April 16th, and ending on Tuesday, April 22nd. Mr. President, I move adoption.
Dean Zaffarini moves adoption of the resolution. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock.
There being 31 ayes and 0 nays, the resolution is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Senator Hagenbu is recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on Senate Bill 1596.
Thank you, Mr. President. Member, Senate Bill 1596 seeks to amend the Texas Penal Code by removing, quote, short barrel firearms, unquote, from the list of prohibited weapons under Section 46.05A. As it currently stands, Texas law criminalizes the possession, manufacture, transportation, repair, or sale of short barrel firearms, unless they are registered under the federal national firearms registration with a $200 fee, in which case they'd be legal then. This bill would strike that provision, placing sole reliance on federal regulation for oversight of short barrel firearms. Mr. President, I move to suspend the normal order of business to take up and consider SB 1596.
Senator Eckhart, for what purpose?
To ask questions of the author.
Senator Hagenbu, do you yield for questions?
Yes.
Senator Eckhart, you're recognized.
Are you aware of any of the school shooters in Texas having used a short barrel firearm to perpetrate their school shooting?
Yes, I believe there was one used in the Santa Fe shooting along with another weapon as well.
Are you aware that one of the students in the Santa Fe shooting basically barred the door of a closet where students were hiding and was murdered by that short barrel firearm?
I've read the recount of all the facts of that terrible incident. Yes.
What could possibly be the use of a short barrel firearm that you would want to make it more available in the state of Texas?
Yeah. Well, this bill, it's currently legal in Texas to own a short barrel firearm. You just have to register with the ATF and pay a $200 fee. So it's currently legal to own a short barrel firearm if you do that. This law does not change, getting rid of this law doesn't change that at all. It's still required to register with the ATF and pay $200, and then it's legal to own one. So it doesn't change. It's really just eliminating an unnecessary redundant law from the Texas Code, but it doesn't really change in terms of whether it's legal or not. And they are legal today. You just have to register for the ATF and pay $200 fee.
So what goal are you trying to achieve with this bill?
Just eliminate an unnecessary redundant law for the most part. It's antiquated. It's been on the books since almost 100 years ago. It doesn't. It's unnecessary.
So that it removes the presumption about a short barrel firearm being really, what is the function of someone even owning a short barrel firearm? Makes it easier to hide under a coat.
Say again, pardon me?
It's easier to hide under a coat.
Well, there's a number of functions. For example, even nowadays, just a pistol, where if you put a stabilizing stock on your arm, say, and this could be for people who are disabled or someone who just wants to stabilize when they're firing their weapon, that would be considered a short barrel rifle. So there's a variety of reasons why a person may have a weapon that may fall within that length. It's everything under 16 inches, basically, except for a handgun, which is it's kind of a strange law. That's another reason why it doesn't make a lot of sense, because if you have this is 16 inches from my elbow to my end of my finger. If you have a rifle with a barrel half-inch longer than it's legal. If you have a pistol that's shorter than that, it's legal as well. It's sort of a strange, unnecessary law that there's some measurement in between is illegal in Texas law.
Well,
and again, as I said,
as my father used to say, you can see someone coming with a rifle, but you can't see someone coming with a hidden short barrel or pistol.
Well, pistols are legal though, right? This law, there's a variety of reasons why someone may have a weapon that may measure shorter than 16 inches for a short barrel. That, by the way, that was an arbitrary length. Originally it was 18 inches, and when the M16 came out, one version of it, they changed it to 16 inches, also a very arbitrary number.
Thank you for answering my questions.
You bet.
Senator Cook, for what purpose?
To ask a few questions of the author.
Senator Hagenbu, do you yield for questions?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator
President.
Cook, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator. Are you aware, Senator Hagenbu, of when these got an added level of scrutiny? When these short barrel firearms became more heavily scrutinized by the federal government?
My understanding was during the days of Prohibition back in the 1920s, 30s, someplace in there.
Yep, it was in the 1930s, 1934, because they were more concealable than rifles, more powerful than handguns, and because police officers were afraid of criminals who had short-barreled firearms in their hands. Are you aware that the opinions of the courts have upheld that federal law multiple times through basically the last century?
Not specifically aware of those facts. I don't know if they really pertain all that much. And my point being is that it's legal in Texas to own one if you register it and pay $200, and that won't change if we pass this bill.
Right, and in United States v. Miller in 1939, the courts held that it did not have a reasonable relationship to the preservation or efficiency of a well-regulated militia, and then multiple court opinions since then have labeled them dangerous and unusual weapons with no legitimate use in the hands of private individuals linked to criminal activity typically possessed, they are not typically possessed by law-abiding citizens for lawful purposes. Have you read all these quotes?
I'm aware of them, but there's also facts like this, that a pistol, if you add a brace, a stabilizing brace, is considered categorized in this category, which is just for a person who happens to own a pistol, want to be able to hold it more stably. It can't be for people who are handicapped. There's other reasons than way back then on why you may have a weapon that's of this length. There's a variety of reasons why that's the case. So that's why I think part of the reason why it's legal to own one if you register and pay $200. And that, as again, as I said, that wouldn't change if we pass this bill.
I appreciate you saying earlier that it's antiquated. What I see as antiquated is that the fee wasn't indexed to inflation. because it should be worth over more than $4,000 today and was designed to deter people from purchasing them. Senator Higginbotham, do you consider yourself somebody who's motivated by outcomes or by ideology?
Probably some of both, I would say.
What's the outcome that you're hoping to achieve from this bill?
Sure. Primarily just to get rid of an unnecessary redundant law. Also to make sure that people who own, say, a pistol, they want to put a stabilizing brace on, are able to do that.
I'm talking about your bill.
Pardon me?
I was asking about your bill, not others' content, just for the record. So even if this bill passes and it were to result in more people having short barrel firearms, more people having more powerful and more concealable weapons that we know have been used to murder Texas children, if that results in a higher death rate, is this bill still worth it?
Well, I had my staff look into that. We couldn't find any facts that would show that short barrel firearms have been linked to any kind of increase in crime. And there's still, a pistol is still very legal, and it's, we were talking about even more concealable. So that doesn't, I don't see where these weapons are more dangerous than a pistol or any other weapon.
Okay, so did you know that the medical and forensic impact of short barrel shotguns, can you name any of the kind of immediate medical outcomes of a short range shot from one of these guns?
Not specifically, but I do know any kind of shotgun has a little bit about, without going into details here, the sort of the spread of the projectiles, those kind of things.
Have you ever seen a gun wound in person up close before? Yes, likely, right? Have you interacted with gun wounds in person up close?
I've seen some before, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so, we know these things cause extensive tissue destruction. They require amputation. They're incompatible with survival. These are not wounds that anybody can survive. So what is the motivation for peeling back even just the slightest hurdle for somebody just going out and buying one of these?
Well, I think what you're talking about is it could apply to a lot of different kinds of firearms, depending no matter what the length is, and those of course are legal. And again, this bill doesn't change the fact that they're already illegal. They're already legal in Texas as long as you register with the federal government and pay a fee, and that's still the case. It's still required if this bill passes to do the same thing. You have to get a background check. You have to register with ATF. You have to pay $200 fee. That remains the same.
Is your concern over the health outcomes of Texas children or your concern over gun owners' fees bigger?
Pardon me, say that again?
Are you more concerned about fees that gun owners have to pay or about whether or not kids come home from school every day?
And neither of those had really come into my thought process on this. I'm just telling you the reason being it's a redundant, unnecessary law. I think certainly firearms can be handled safely, and that's obviously a Second Amendment right.
Yeah, lawmakers and the courts for about 100 years have all agreed that an extra hurdle in front of these firearms is pretty important. And I think we all know that the reason that there's a lack of data is because it has been hard for people to get their hands on these, thank God. And that the federal government neglected to research firearm violence for years because of the influence of special interests and lobbyists. So that's why you can't find the data, because luckily there haven't been as many crimes committed by these because they have been harder to get. And in 2021, there were over 532,000 registered short-barreled rifles in the US. There is a growing interest in these firearms. There is a growing number of mass shootings. And so I just want to ask you one more time, what's the reason that you want to take away this slight roadblock that we've got in front of a really dangerous weapon?
Well, for one thing, I think the increase may just simply because they recategorized a pistol with a stabilizing brace is a short barrel firearm. So that happened, I think, a couple of years ago. So that may be why you see statistically that they have increased. But again, I've said already that you're not making it any harder or less hard for a person to own a short barrel rifle in Texas. That currently there's legal if you register with the ATF and pay a fee, and it'll still be the case if we pass this bill.
If it doesn't make a difference, then why are we writing a bill about it?
I think it's unnecessary, redundant bill that Texas doesn't need to have. It's already in federal code.
Despite 100 years of lawmakers in the courts agreeing that it does need to be there. Thank you for answering my question, Senator Hagenbu.
You bet.
Senator Menendez, for what purpose?
Thank you, Mr. President. Questions of the author?
Senator Hagenbu, do you yield for questions?
Yes.
Senator Menendez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Hagenbu. Senator Hagenbu, I've been listening to the exchanges, but I think the bill does a little bit more than what, as far as I read it, and maybe you could help me. It's my understanding that your bill would remove the criminal offense for the distribution or selling of a short barrel firearm, even in the event that that firearm is not registered. That's a concern that I have. And as I was looking at your bill, it simply starts here on, let's say here, the items that have to be registered with the National Firearms Registration and Transfer. And it starts on line 34. An explosive weapon, a machine gun, a short barrel firearm, armor-piercing ammunition, a chemical dispensing device, a zip gun, a tire deflation device, or improvised explosive device. My concern is that by you taking in this bill that you're proposing and running a line through short barrel firearm, that you're sending a message that it's okay, and that law enforcement no longer can stop someone. I mean, you know that this state is an open carry state. Is that correct?
Yes, I do.
So currently, anybody could, walk around with a pistol on their hip or whatever, a long arm. But now they can walk around, if your bill passes, with a sawed-off shotgun. Are you not concerned the damage that could happen because of that? I mean, so I think this, you said it's a redundant piece of legislation, and what I've been hearing is that maybe because it has to be registered and someone has to pay a permit, it keeps people who might want to use it for harm from owning that. Are you not worried that you're removing a barrier from someone that might want to do that?
I'm really not concerned because it's still federal law, right? I mean,
right.
That remains the same.
But doesn't your bill also say if it's not registered that it's no longer a criminal offense in the state of Texas? I mean, yeah, it's still a federal law, but now in Texas it's not. That's what the bill does, isn't it?
Well, federal law still applies, though.
Correct, but you're saying you're taking the possession, ownership, distribution out of state code. That's what I understand. Is that not correct?
Correct. Yes, it is. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So you're just saying that in the state of Texas, a weapon that we know that has been deemed not to have any use possibly outside of potentially criminal offense. It's a firearm and shotguns and rifles. We many of us in this room are hunters and fishermen, and we own these things. But these sawed-off shotguns have a history of being used in criminal activity. I mean, they're known as sawed-off shotgun, scattergun, short-barreled, shorty, boomstick, all of these things, and I worry that. And I was hoping that maybe you did too, that by removing the state penalty for owning this or distributing this, that we would make it more readily accessible. One of my concerns is that now, if this bill of yours becomes law, that you might start seeing these sawed-off shotguns in gun shows or flea markets, where someone could just walk in and maybe you have a seller that's not like a reputable gun store, just selling to anybody who walks up, and there is no background check. And now we have even more dangerous weapons on the streets. Are you not concerned about that?
I'm not, because as I said, the remains, you have to register and pay the fee. I think that it's a little bit of a broad, sweeping statement to say that they're just for sawed-off shotguns. Again, a pistol, if you put a stabilizing, a pistol this long like this is legal.
Right.
If If you add a stabilizing brace to it, it becomes illegal, and you have to, under this law. Now, thankfully, you can go ahead and register under ATF and pay a fee, which remains the same. So when we had the committee hearing, a gentleman talked about that it'd be nice to have a rifle that's about that long if you're teaching a young person, you come from their early teen years, to have a rifle that size. So there's other reasons why you may have a weapon that's 16 inches or less long, not only a sawed-off shotgun.
Okay. Well, thank you for answering my questions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Hinojosa of Hidalgo. For what purpose?
Will Senator yield for questions?
Senator Hagenbu, do you yield?
Yes.
Senator Hinojosa, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Without getting into the broader debate of whether you're for guns or against guns, I think the issue here with Senate Bill 1596 is that there were certain short barrel guns that for years and decades they've been legal. Now what we have is the AFT changing the rules to make them illegal because of a stabilizer. They use a stabilizer. Isn't that the gist of the bill itself? In other words, you have people that own guns right now that are legal.
Right.
And they're short barrel guns. Right? They're not covered by AFT. They have looked and said, that's okay, that's legal. Now they're looking at changing that rule to make those guns that are now legal, make them illegal.
Correct.
So you have a lot of people now who are obeying the law and abiding by the statute, abiding by the rules. All of a sudden they are being made into criminals.
That's right. Yes. There's an estimate of over 300,000 Texans who could be considered made criminals just because they're add a stabilizing brace to their pistol.
And that's the point of your bill. So you don't want all these people who already are doing something that's legal and allowed by present laws, present rules, all of a sudden become felons.
Yes, you're correct in that.
Thank you for answering my question, Senator.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Gutierrez, for what purpose?
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentleman yield for a few questions?
Senator Hagenbu, will you yield?
Yes, certainly.
Senator Gutierrez, you're recognized.
Senator, I understand the importance that you have in your mind of this bill, and I want to go over some things that you've discussed already. You said that this is redundant and an unnecessary law. Can you explain that to us?
Simply because today, currently, and I'm sorry to be repetitive, but that's the only way I know to answer your question is currently today, you can have a short barrel rifle as long as you register with the ATF, get the background check, pay $200. That remains the same, even after we pass this.
But when this became law in the 1930s, it was at law enforcement insistence, was it not?
I understand that's right. I think a lot of things have changed since then, including some of the reasons why I mentioned it. It could be for a short rifle for a younger person, could be a pistol with a stabilizing brace, a variety of things that probably may not be considered at that point in time.
It was interesting because these types of guns, these types of short-barreled shotguns, you would have your criminal element. They would cut off the barrel at the end and they would hide it in their trench coats, and it was the mafia, you see, that the FBI was going after, and it was in that history, in that time, that these laws were created, and it was because the concealability of that short-barreled shotgun in the long trench coat, was it not?
I think that might have been the reason. I don't know for sure, but my guess.
And the interesting thing about shotguns is that they, you have different kinds of shot inside the casing shells, correct?
Yes, there's different options. That's right. Yes.
Do you hunt birds like I do?
I do sometimes. Yes.
Okay. You use a 12 gauge or a 20 gauge?
12.
I use a 20 gauge. Some people tell me that's they tell me that's a girl's gun. I tell them it's harder. It's a lot harder to shoot birds with a 20 gauge. The shot is different for quail than it is for some larger animal, because sometimes people use shotguns for larger animals too, right?
think that's right, yes.
Right. And sometimes that shot, have you ever opened a shell casing from a shotgun shell and seen the different size of shot
Yes, I have.
that's inside of the casing?
Yes.
And if you're looking at birds, it's a tiny little pellet, right? And if you're shooting maybe rabbit or something or turkey, you've got a bigger buckshot right inside of that thing. And sometimes there's only 3 or 4 of those types of casing shells inside of that, those little pellets inside of the casing shell itself, right?
Yes, sir. I think that's
And
accurate.
the interesting thing about the shotgun, the reason it was created was because it would have that spray effect as you were out there shooting that bird, right?
Yes, yes.
But with these larger animals, it still has that spray effect, right? That it does it, unlike a bullet that's going straight at you, that shotgun is going to have a wider appeal, isn't it?
Correct.
And so you don't have to be so dead on, let's say, to go off and kill what it is that you're trying to kill if you've got that shot. Do you think it was maybe law enforcement back then that knew that they didn't want to have to deal with some guy in a gabardine coat with a shotgun, short barrel cut off, with a large buckshot spray that could shoot cops, maybe multiple cops at a time?
May have been. I don't know for sure, but I think your point is a reasonable assumption.
And I don't want to bring up anything. I think, first off, thank you for your service to this country. My wonder is, as a naval person, did you see actual hand-to-hand combat, anything like that in your career?
I saw one situation, but not very much of it.
Okay. Did you ever see anybody shot?
I have seen that before, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever seen children or anybody shot in the face with anything like this?
No, thank God I have not.
It's a horrible thing, I'll submit to you. And being shot by an AR-15 is certainly different than being shot by one of these weapons, but nevertheless, the end result is generally usually the same, which means dead, right?
Yes, sir.
Does the name Aaron McLeod ring a bell to you?
I think I've heard before, yes.
Where does Aaron McLeod ring a bell to you in that sense?
Was that part of the Uvalde?
No.
Then I missed.
No, sir. How about, I'll just go through a series of names and see if you recall them. Angelique Ramirez.
No.
Kimberly Vaughn.
No.
Cynthia Tisdale.
No.
Sabika Sheikh. Jared Black.
No.
Shayna Fisher.
No.
Glenda Ann Perkins.
No.
Christian Riley Garcia.
No.
Christopher Stone.
No.
All these young people and 2 teachers were shot in Santa Fe, Texas.
Okay. That's Santa Fe, yeah.
When that happened, they were shot and killed. I didn't know we had a Santa Fe in Texas. Mr. President, I had to go look on the news and find out where Santa Fe, Texas was. And Senator, I'll submit to you that it was kind of a surprise to me because back then it didn't have the kind of effect on me as these mass shootings have on me now after Uvalde, because it became even more personal to me yet still. I will tell you about what that gun did. The shooter's name was Dimitris Pagortzis, a young man who was at home, and he sat there and he got into his father's gun cabinet, and not only did he saw off the one shotgun, but he sawed off 3 others. And then he picked and chose how he made his decision, God knows. But he came in the long gabardine coat. He went into the school. You see him on camera, and he's got this gun concealed in his coat, and he's got a handgun. And he goes in there, and he shoots all these people dead. I asked you about Christopher Stone earlier, right?
Yes, you did.
Chris Stone ran into a closet in the art class. 4 of his classmates had run into that closet beforehand. Chris went in there, opened the door, shuttered himself in because they knew that guy was coming down the hallway. He sees Christopher shut that door. Christopher jams himself up into this door. And with that short-barreled shotgun, this guy proceeds to just pump four actually, shells into that door, killing Christopher dead with a gun that he had concealed in a gabardine coat that had a wider spread, a smaller shot to make intense damage. Christopher saved his 4 children because in so jamming himself against the door, he died jammed up against that door. When that guy was trying to open that door to kill the rest of those kids survived. And I don't mean to belabor the point, because I see the concern in your eyes. I see the importance that the impact that this has on you. But making a law that you claim is redundant, fixing a redundant and unnecessary law, doesn't change the outcome for these people that are now dead. Doesn't change the outcome for Christopher Stone. It's now dead. Now you might say, well, it would have happened anyway. Obviously it did happen. But we're not here to try to solve the problems of yesterday, are we? We have to solve the problems for tomorrow. And by you fixing a redundant and unnecessary law, in your mind, what is the net effect of this law if it goes into place?
The net effect is, as I've said, by the way, terrible tragedy, and terrible to hear about. I think I read about Uvalde and the Santa Fe case, and I now remember I saw some of those names, and it is difficult to remember. And terrible thing. As I said, it is currently legal to own a short barrel firearm, and it will continue to be if you do the same thing you do today, which is register and pay the fee. I do think that Senator Hinojosa's point is one good one, in that there are Texans who've legally owned a pistol for years, and with, I think, a recent federal law change, or ATF regulation change, if you put a stabilizing stock on your arm, it could essentially make it illegal. They still now will have to go ahead and register, but at least under Texas law, that's not an illegal firearm.
By fixing the so-called redundant and unnecessary law, you are putting more legal firearms and making it more accessible to people to buy these types of things at the gun show. Are you not?
I don't know if that's the case.
Will you be able to buy these things at the gun show if this law were to pass?
I don't think anything, from my understanding, will change from the current situation where and I don't, tell you the truth, I don't know whether they're sold at gun shows or not. I doubt it. But you'll still have to do the same exact thing in a background check, register with ATF, pay a $200 fee. So I know that much won't change. I don't know the details of gun shows.
Well, Senator, I submit to you, by fixing a so-called redundant and unnecessary law, you're putting more guns on the street, and you're going to make it easier for kids to get shot in this state. And you're going to make it easier for young men to go off and conceal more of these weapons in their coats yet again. And that, sir, is the net effect of this kind of law. I have no further questions, Mr.
Thanks, Senator.
Senator Hagenbu moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Bill 1596. There is objection. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Nueces, Hinojosa, Hidalgo, Huffman.
There being 21 ayes and 10 nays, the rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 1596. The Secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 1596, relating the prohibition of short barrel firearms.
Senator Hagenbu, you're recognized for a motion. Hold, members, there is an amendment, the following amendment.
Floor Amendment number 1 by Gutierrez.
Senator Gutierrez, you're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this is a dangerous bill. It is a dangerous bill because law enforcement said it was dangerous 90 years ago. They are right then and they are right now. We don't need to make any big speeches on the floor today on this for this amendment. This amendment is simple. It says that it requires that when a short barrel firearm is sold, it must be through a licensed firearm dealer and that a criminal background check be conducted. That's all we could ask for a gun that you can hide in your jacket, a gun that doesn't shoot straight, that shoots all over the place at you, that causes extreme damage to young bodies, to anybody. And that's what happened in Santa Fe, Texas, and it's a reasonable amendment. It's a reasonable amendment. Move adoption.
Chair recognizes Senator Hagenbu on the amendment.
Appreciate that. I can tell you gave it some good thought, but I'm not in favor of this amendment.
Questions on the adoption of floor amendment number 1. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa of Nueces, Hinojosa of Hidalgo, Huffman, Hughes, Johnson, King, Colcourse, Menendez.
There being 10 ayes and 21 nays, the amendment fails to be adopted. Chair recognizes Senator Hagenbu for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move passage of Senate Bill 5096 to engrossment.
Senator Hagenbu moves passage to engrossment. There is objection. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa of Nueces.
There being 21 ayes and 10 nays, the bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Hagenbu will hold there.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator King, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 326.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, during the 2021 legislative session, this body passed House Bill 3257 to adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, IHRA, widely used definition of anti-Semitism. It was placed in the government code, codifying this definition and its examples, and it was intended to provide a foundational tool for Texans to identify and combat acts of anti-Semitism in our communities. The Holocaust, Genocide, and Anti-Semitism Commission of Texas each year before we go into session, publishes their legislative recommendations to the legislature. SB 326 is a product of that. SB 326 builds on the foundation of the 2021 legislation by requiring all Texas school districts, open enrollment charter schools, and institutions of higher education to consider the IHRA definition when determining whether a student's code of conduct violation was motivated by anti-Semitism. This definition, with its examples, are widely used and accepted. There's 35 other states, including the District of Columbia, that are currently using or have recognized the importance of this definition of anti-Semitism. The federal government also uses this definition. During his first term and during his current term, President Trump issued executive orders requiring all federal agencies to utilize this definition when enforcing Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. And in 2024, Governor Abbott issued an executive order requiring all state agencies to apply it as well. Senate Bill 326 is needed to ensure that all Texas schools, colleges, and universities have proper tools to identify and combat anti-Semitism. And with that, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business to take up and consider at this time Senate Bill 326.
Senator Menendez, for what purpose?
Questions of the author, Mr. President.
Does the author yield?
Certainly.
Senator Menendez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator King. Senator King, you know, you and I, we spoke in committee and we've had several conversations. And we're all aware of the fact that many institutions of higher education in the state and around the country have recently seen protests and student activism related to sensitive issues. In some cases, certain actions and imagery were perceived by some as being anti-Semitic, and sometimes even when it was coming from Jewish students. So now recognizing, as we are navigating a lot of sensitivities, in my opinion, it is imperative that we balance the very real safety concerns of our Jewish students and any given person's right to free speech. And I know that you've been a leader on free speech on our campuses. So how can we make sure that this bill protects the students' right to freedom of speech and expression while also ensuring that the behaviors may be perceived as hateful and discriminatory are addressed appropriately? And I guess where you and I talked about it on the dais, and you know that I share your intent to protect people from anti-Semitism. The issue, though, is that you can be against anti-Semitism, but not necessarily be supportive of the actions of a government. And how do we make sure we strike that balance? And I'm just have a little concern about that.
Certainly, that's a great question. And I think one distinction about the bill is that it only applies if the school, if the institution has already determined that a code of conduct violation has occurred. Once it has occurred, then when they're considering proper disciplinary action, the definition allows them to consider whether or not that code of conduct violation, spitting in someone's face, slapping them, some other type of harassment, was motivated by anti-Semitism.
Sure.
And so it's not until after the institution, in your example, a university, has determined that a code of conduct violation has occurred and they're considering proper discipline, then they would apply the definition to see if the action of the student that violated the code was a product of anti-Semitism or something else. It in no way prohibits freedom of speech for a student to be disagreeing in a government class or in a protest, discussing with someone whether or not Israel is right to take certain actions or whether the Palestinians were right to take certain actions. But if it was a statement, for example, from the river to the sea, well, in one context, that really means nothing. In a context of a Jew who's supporting Israel, that can mean a totally different thing and will, because it's talking about marching someone to their death. Or when someone comes up and says, you should be in an oven, that may mean one thing in one context, but when said to a Jewish student, and it referencing back obviously to the Holocaust, it would clearly be an anti-Semitic motivation or event.
So I think we've established that this bill will not allow any student or students from being disciplined from protesting, whether they protest, for the position of the Jewish government or the position of the Gaza and Palestine or Ukraine versus Russia, whatever. That's not what you're trying to address. Now, I am concerned, though, that some examples within the IHRA definition get right up to toe that line about freedom of speech, so I can definitely understand how these examples could be hurtful and bigoted, and I'm against that. But unfortunately, I don't believe that's the threshold for freedom of speech, and so I understand that the example may be Many feel that they can be against the policies of Israel, not the same as against being against the Jewish people. And that's the thing that I want to make sure, and I hope you agree, that there is a nuance to this discussion, just as we should be able to we critique our own government all the time. We've had people talk about, their disagreement with the, current president or the former president, whichever side you line up on, and no one gets in trouble, or those of Russia, China, or Iran. The IRA definition of anti-Semitism has examples drawing comparisons to contemporary Israel policy to that of Nazis, and that's a concern, and so I want to make sure we address those. Do you believe that this policy falls within our obligation as a governing body to make laws that don't infringe upon freedom of speech, Senator?
Yes, I do. And in fact, we were very careful in laying out the initial wording of the bill itself. And it says, relating to the procedure for determining whether a student's violation, so a violation has already occurred of the code of conduct of a public schools or public institution of higher education student code of conduct was motivated by anti-Semitism. So I believe I think, elegantly crafted it to protect First Amendment discussions, particularly those in a classroom, obviously.
Yep.
By specifying that it was not until the school had first determined that a code of conduct violation had occurred, then they would apply the definition to determine if that code of conduct violation was motivated by anti-Semitism, and if it was, then take that into consideration in whatever means was appropriate in the disciplinary decision.
Appreciate that. I just want to make sure that what we do is falling within the bounds of everyone's constitutional rights, because as we saw last year, there are huge impacts to statewide policy directives that get initiated. For the record, Senator King, just for legislative intent, I want to make sure, and it's a little bit of statements that's going to come with a question, that we are clear. Your legislative intent in this bill only comes into the picture when a student, as you've said, already broke the student code of conduct, and then and only then would the definition of anti-Semitism be considered in the investigation. That's correct. That's what you said.
That's very specific in the bill, yes.
But just to make sure we're not preempting free speech, and while we may not always like or agree what's being said, it's important that we don't conflate a student's feelings with the actions of a government with those against a people and their faith. Because I do not support anybody being prejudiced, bigoted, or doing something against someone just because of who they are. But the actions of a government are separate and aside. We should be able to criticize those.
Absolutely. You could be a Ukrainian American and not agree with either side in the Ukraine-Russia war. You could be Palestinian, not agree with what happened in Gaza with the invasion. You could be Jewish, not agree with certain elements of Israeli policy.
Senator King, I appreciate you answering my questions and the time that we spent on this. I do have an amendment that hopefully tends to put some belts and suspenders on this. It doesn't change anything in your bill, but I appreciate you taking my questions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Eckhart, for what purpose?
To ask questions of the author.
Senator King, do you yield for questions?
Yes, certainly.
Senator Eckhart, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much, Senator. I just was looking for clarification. With regard to higher education would be confined to using this definition only, correct?
No, they could use, well, it is a definition that they would have to apply to the situation. I don't think it prohibits them considering other definitions, but they definitely have to run their disciplinary decision through this filter.
I believe it says that they shall apply this definition.
They shall apply, yes.
48001.
Yeah, I think they have to run it through that filter.
And with regard to K through 12, I was looking at the education statute. Was there any consideration in putting anti-Semitism or any other maligning of a religious group into the student code of conduct? in section, oh God, it's like 32.08 something or other.
Good question. So as you know, it's this statute with this definition with the examples are already in the government code since 2021. Then in 2024, Governor Abbott, by executive order, applied this to colleges and universities and to all state agencies. And this bill was intended to respond to the legislative request of the Anti-Semitism Commission by making sure that this definition was applied in the education environment. That doesn't mean that there is not room in the future for definitions regarding biases against other people or something else. This bill was specifically intended to address what is a very clear and growing problem with anti-Semitism in our country, and particularly seen manifested in our schools.
So with regard to bullying generally, do you feel it's necessary to call out anti-Semitism specifically because it's not sufficient to say, for instance, in 37.0832, placing a student in reasonable fear of harm, creating an intimidating, threatening, or abusive educational environment, materially, substantially disrupting the educational process and infringing on the rights of the student?
Well, you're right. Bullying is already prohibited in statute because it is a problem and has been a problem for a number of years, and a growing problem. We tried to address that by statute. Anti-Semitism is something which I really thought was pretty well extinguished in the United States. And in just recent years, we've seen that it's not, and we see that it's actually growing in a very disturbing manner. So it seemed appropriate to go ahead and apply this definition that is internationally accepted, 35 other states plus the District of Columbia, presidential executive orders and a state executive order, and go ahead and get it to where it will be considered, if you're Eastern Hills High School and you have a student that violates your code of conduct and you suspect that that code of conduct violation may have been motivated by bullying, you're going to look at that bullying statute. If you as administrator think it may have been motivated by anti-Semitism, then the question always comes up, well, what is anti-Semitism? Just like the question came up, what is bullying? And in this case, they could look to that definition and receive guidance from that definition and from its examples. And again, it is guidance. It is guidance for the administrators.
So if there are additional examples of holding the Jewish people up to social shaming and undue criticism, do you expect the list of examples to get longer that we put in statute?
I think the examples were developed over long periods of consideration. They are not exclusive, I would think, to other examples that might arise. I mean, obviously, we want common sense to be a part of this. So again, to my example, the river to the sea, in one context, that might not mean anything. In another context, it would clearly indicate anti-Semitism. There may be other slogans and sayings that come up, but river to the sea is not specifically mentioned in the examples. But I would hope that if that came up, they would look at the examples, look at the definition, look at what's going on in the context, and decide whether or not that was anti-Semitic in nature.
Thanks so much for answering my questions.
Thank you very much.
Senator King moves suspension of the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 326. Is there objection? Hearing none, the rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading committee substitute for Senate Bill 326. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 326 relating to procedure for determining whether a student's violation of a public school's or public institution of higher education's student code of conduct was motivated by anti-Semitism.
The following amendment.
Floor Amendment Number 1 by Menendez.
Senator Menendez, you recognize on the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Members, as you've heard, I mean, and those of you who've been here for a while know I do not oppose the intent of this bill. As a matter of fact, I have the honor of passing the Holocaust Remembrance Week bill, and I firmly believe that we must address anti-Semitism in all places, including our institutions of education, where it's important and necessary. I have a long track record, and I appreciate the conversation, the discussion with my friend, Senator King. The bill currently references the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which is widely recognized in different areas of code. However, we, during the Education Committee, heard a lot of feedback from all sides of the issue that specific examples used in the definition of anti-Semitism may possibly go too far, and therefore they could create a chilling effect on free speech for students. We must remember that these places are learning environments where academic freedom is essential for development of our students, and that we cannot limit speech based on content, no matter how disagreeable or bigoted it might be. Jewish people are not the government of Israel or its policies. It would be dangerous to make those two things synonymous. We should all have a right to criticize our government or any government, whether it be Israeli, Russian, Palestinian, European Union, any of them. This amendment maintains the definition of anti-Semitism as it has been filed, but it seeks to exclude the reference to specific examples given to ensure that we are not legislating outside the bounds of our Constitution. I'll give you an example in the amendments. If you Google the IHRA definition, one example, you can say here that holding Jews collectively responsible for the actions of the state of Israel. That wouldn't be right. That's a good amendment. Drawing comparisons to the contemporary Israeli policy to that of Nazis. You have a lot in here that you kind of might say, that doesn't make sense. And so I just worry that by including all of these examples in our state government code, that we are potentially saying that at that point, you can no longer have a conversation or discussion about the actions of the Israeli government. And that's my concern, and that's why I present this amendment. I think, I hope it's acceptable to the author, which I agree with the intent of his bill. And with that, I move adoption of floor amendment number 1.
Senator King, you're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you. I'm going to respectfully not accept the amendment for several reasons. One, the definitions are already in Texas law, in the Texas Government Code. This would just be making sure that they are also recognized in the Education Code. They are also, by executive order of the governor from 2024, already required to be followed by state agencies, including public colleges and universities. So in that sense, we are simply codifying further that which is already in the code and in executive order. In addition, the examples and the definition are never to be reviewed by an education institution again until it's already been established by the school that the conduct in question was a violation of the school's code of conduct. Then if it was, then they would, if they think that that conduct may have been motivated by anti-Semitism, then they can look to these examples for additional clarification and to guide their thoughts. I will tell you that the Holocaust, Genocide and Anti-Semitism Commission, each time I spoke to them about this bill, they were very, very insistent of the importance of including the definitions along with the statute in their legislative recommendations.
Question is on the adoption of floor amendment number 1. Secretary will call the roll.
I wish West would look up. How about Johnson? Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
There being 9 ayes and 22 nays, the amendment fails to adopt. Senator King, you're recognized for a motion.
Move passage to engrossment.
Senator King moves passage to engrossment. Is there objection? Hearing none, the bill is passed to engrossment. Senator King, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved.
Senator King moves suspension of the 3-day rule. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa.
There being 29 ayes and 2 nays, the rules are suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 326. The Secretary will read the caption.
Committee Substitute Senate Bill 326 relating to the procedure for determining whether a student's violation of a public schools or public institution of higher education student code of conduct was motivated by anti-Semitism.
Senator King, you're recognized for a motion.
Move final passage.
Senator King moves final passage. Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 326. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton.
There being 29 ayes and 2 nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Senator Sparks, recognized on Senate Bill 1320, suspend the regular order of business.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, Senate Bill 1320 creates a dedicated unit within the DPS with the authority to investigate and arrest individuals engaged in theft of petroleum products. The unit will provide specialized training to local law enforcement agencies, conduct public outreach initiatives, and maintain a centralized database to track oil field theft incidents and related criminal enterprises. We also have an amendment.
Any objection? Hearing none. Rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 1320. Secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 1320 relating to the establishment of the Organized Oil Field Theft Prevention Unit within the Texas Department of Public Safety.
There is an amendment. The following amendment. I'm going to let the Secretary read the amendment.
Floor Amendment number 1 by Sparks.
Give it a moment, Senator, so that everyone gets it to the back. I think they all have it. You're recognized on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment replaces the introduced version of the bill with a legislative council version of the bill, and it also allows for satellite offices to be set up across the state rather than just in the Permian Basin. With that, Mr. President, I move adoption.
Any objection? Hearing none. Amendment is adopted. You recognize passage to engrossment. You're recognized for passage to engrossment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage to engrossment.
Any objection? Hearing none. Bill passes to engrossment. You're recognized to suspend the constitutional three-day rule.
Thank you, Mr. President. So moved.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
30 ayes, 1 nay. The constitutional three-day rule is suspended. Now we have third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 1320. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 1320 relating to the establishment of the Organized Oil Field Theft Prevention Unit.
You're recognized on final.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage to Senate Bill 1320.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt,
30
Birdwell.
ayes, 1 nay. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members.
Senator Betancourt, you're recognized to suspend the regular order of business. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 1567.
Thank you, Mr. President. Under home rule authority, some cities regulate the number of unrelated individuals that may reside in the same dwelling unit, regardless of size. These types of ordinance restrict individual property owners and tenants, maximize the use of their dwelling unit potential. Furthermore, we learned from testimony local government committees sought to enforce these by demanding copies of executed contracts from third-party fiduciaries without warrant or subpoena, encouraging citizens to track vehicle movements over months and long periods, which could qualify as criminal harassment under the Penal Code. Committee substitute Senate Bill 1567 seeks to alleviate these burdens by prohibiting municipality from adopting an ordinance that limits the number of people who occupy a dwelling based on age or affiliation, brackets the bill to areas with public institutions, higher education, clarifies that a city may adopt an occupancy limit, but not more than one occupant per sleeping room with a minimum of 70 square feet, and prohibits the city from investigating and enforcing occupancy ordinance violations through inspections of lease documents from real estate brokers, agents, or third-party fiduciaries. I move suspension of regular order of business.
Any objection? Hearing none. Rule is suspended. Chair lays out in second reading. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 1567. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 1567 relating to the authority of home rule municipalities to regulate the occupancy of dwelling units.
You recognize passage to engrossment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage of committee substituted Senate Bill 1567 to engrossment.
Any objection? Hearing none. Bill passed to engrossment. You're recognized to suspend the constitutional three-day rule.
So moved, Mr. President.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell.
30 ayes, 1 nay. The rule is suspended. Chair lays out in third reading and final passage. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 1567. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 1567 relating to the authority of home rule municipalities to regulate the occupancy of dwelling units.
You're recognized on final.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage of committee substituted Senate Bill 1567.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell.
30 ayes, no nays. The bill is finally passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Senator West, committee substitute for Senate Bill 605. Suspend the regular order of business.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Members, at this time, I move to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider Senate Bill 605. Members, Currently, Texas law provides that a charter school may expand by amending their charter agreement unless they do not meet the general academic and financial criteria. However, due to the way these academic and financial criteria are evaluated, it's possible for a charter holder to be the subject of an enforcement action while still meeting all benchmarks on paper, allowing a potential flawed operator to expand. In 2024, the largest charter school operator in Texas was placed under managing conservatorship by the Texas Education Agency as a result of a years-long investigation. Members, this investigation found that the school had multiple issues with state and federal laws relating to financial controls and misspent tens of millions of dollars in state and federal funds. The Federal Department of Education required the operator to pay back $28 million in federal grant funds that they had misspent and barred them from receiving federal funds for several years. Guess where they got the $28 million in order to pay back the federal government? State funds. However, current financial and academic accountability systems did not catch these violations. During the entire period in which this charter was operated was misappropriating approximately $100 million in state and federal funds. They received ratings of A, superior achievement, the highest ranking under the charter first. Within a month following the appointment of the managing conservator, the charter operator submitted and had approved a charter expansion amendment for 5 additional campuses across the state. This bill is a necessary check on the Commissioner of Education's discretion to approve charter amendments when charter operators should not expand their operations unless their affairs, both financial and academics, are in fact in order. Move suspension.
Members, any objection? Hearing none. Rules are suspended. Chair lays down second reading. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 605. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 605 relating to the establishment of a new open enrollment charter school campus by certain charter holders and to the expansion of an open enrollment charter school.
You recognize on passage to engrossment.
Move passage to engrossment, Mr.
Any
President.
objection? Hearing none. Bill passed to engrossment. You recognize suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So move.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt,
30
Birdwell.
ayes, 1 nay. The rule is suspended. Chair lays out third reading and final passage. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 605. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 605 relating to the establishment of a new open enrollment charter school campus.
You're recognized on final.
Move final passage of committee substitute Senate Bill 605.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Birdwell.
30 ayes and 1 nay. The bill is finally passed. Thank you, Senator. Senator Swartner, you're recognized to suspend the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 1810.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, Mr. President, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business, take up and consider at this time committee substitute Senate Bill 1810. Members, Texas is one of only 3 states that set title insurance premiums. This bill comes after the TDI conducted a public hearing earlier this year to review and fix the title insurance basic premium rates. The resulting order from the commissioner was a 10% decrease in title insurance rates. During this January 2025 hearing, consideration was given based only on data available through the end of 2022, as more recent data has not been provided or processed, thus highlighting the importance of relevant information in these deliberations. Senate Bill 1810 seeks to address this data lag by mandating specific deadlines for TDI to collect and publish financial data from the title industry. It refines the dates in which TDI must issue the data call and adjust TDI's publication date, setting the release date for title agent summaries from October 1st and title company summaries to November 1st. There will be a floor amendment from Senator Middleton that is acceptable that further clarifies the data that is to be collected by TDI. Mr. President, I move suspension of the regular order of business committee substitute Senate Bill 1810.
Any objection? Hearing none. Rules are suspended. Chair lays out in second reading committee substitute for Senate Bill 1810. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 1810 relating to annual statistical reports for fixing title insurance premium rates.
Members, the following amendment. Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor amendment number 1 by Middleton.
Senator Middleton on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this is a very good bill by Senator Swartner on transparency, and this just fleshes that out a little more. And this transparency report under Senate Bill 1810 will require loss experience, expenses of operation, premiums, and other material matters as submitted under the report required under 1810. And I move adoption.
Senator Schwartner.
Yes, it's a good amendment and agreeable to the author.
Any objection? Hearing none. The amendment is adopted. You recognize passage to engrossment. Senator?
So moved, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Bill passed to engrossment. You recognize to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved, Mr. President.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt,
30
Birdwell.
ayes, 1 nay. The rules are suspended. Chair lays out third reading and final passage. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 1810. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 1810 relating to annual statistical reports for fixing title insurance premium rates.
You recognize on final.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage of committee substitute Senate Bill 1810.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
30 ayes and 1 present not voting. The bill is finally passed, and we'll correct that on the previous vote as well.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, members.
Members, we're getting ready to take a short break. Senator Zaffirini.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that the Senate recess until 2:30 p.m. today, Monday, April 14th.
Any objection? Hearing none, we'll stand in recess until 2:30. Thank you, members.